Welcome to this video. In this video, I will look at how to teach the basic sounds of the alphabet in a way that is appropriate for English as a foreign language learners. I think the first thing we need to do is decide on the sequence for introducing phonics that is most appropriate for our students. Many phonics sequences were originally designed for native speakers of English, who are learning phonics just to develop their reading and writing skills. This is fundamentally different from English as a foreign language learners, who are also often establishing their pronunciation skills through phonics. Personally, I think the logical starting point in a phonics sequence for foreign language learners is the basic short vowels. A, E, I, O, A. The vowels form the foundation of the pronunciation of words. And when children read, write, and pronounce words using a phonic approach, the easiest way to do this is by using vowels as the basic building block. A, E, I, O, A is how I pronounce them. But there isn't just one correct way of doing this. English is, of course, a world language, and there are many different alternative ways of pronouncing these letters. The important thing is for you as a teacher to be consistent. If you pronounce the letter A one day and R another day, it is unfair to the children. Fortunately, there is an effective way for both the teacher and the children to pronounce the sounds in a consistent way. What do you think is the basic phonic pronunciation of this letter? I say A. How about this one? I say A. A, 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 A. There are many foreign language learners who, at first, find it difficult to distinguish sounds such as A and A, especially children learning English for the first time. And it can also be difficult for teachers to always pronounce these sounds in the same way. How do you pronounce this word? What's the starting sound? However you pronounce the first sound in apple, that's how to pronounce the letter A. It is much easier for both the teacher and the children to pronounce a word in the same way consistently than to pronounce an isolated sound in the same way consistently. We can also easily hear if the two sounds are different. If we say R, apple, we can all hear that it is different, including the person who is saying it. So apple is what is called the anchor word for A. If you use anchor words when introducing sounds, it is much easier for the children and the teacher to pronounce the sounds consistently in the same way, and also to distinguish different sounds. One of the main differences between teaching phonics to English as a foreign language learners and teaching phonics to native speakers is that we often need to teach in a way that enables the children to easily distinguish the sounds associated with letters. To help with this, I suggest that rather than calling this A, both you and the children can call it A, apple, and call this A, umbrella. And we can use cards with the letter on one side and the anchor word on the other side. We continue to call the letters A, apple, or A, umbrella, until the children can easily distinguish the sounds. Notice that I just said A, apple. I didn't say things like A says ah, or A says apple. For native speakers of English, or English as a second language learners, A says might be okay. I'm not teaching those children phonics, so I'll leave that for others to decide. What I can say for certain is that for children learning English as a foreign language, with little exposure to English outside class, it is much faster to only use the sounds, not combine them with the names of the letters. A says is a kind of knowledge, not a skill. It is a two-step translation process. Of course, many children can acquire the skill over time using this approach. But it is much faster if the children instantly think of a sound when they read a letter, without interference from the name of the letter. They just do it. They don't translate it or analyze it when they read. They just say or think, ah. If you need to teach ABC, I suggest doing this as a separate activity from when you teach phonics. Though even this is not as effective as getting rid of ABC altogether. So what's the next stage after the basic vowels? Of course, it's the consonants, which can also be learned through anchor words. The pronunciation of consonants is where I think there is another difference between teaching phonics to native speakers, and possibly second language learners as well, and teaching phonics to foreign language learners. Children who are native speakers can already pronounce English and distinguish sounds before learning phonics. And second language learners can acquire much of these skills from natural interaction outside the classroom. There are many foreign language learners who are in quite a different situation. As I mentioned before, many are establishing their pronunciation of English and learning to distinguish some of the sounds for the first time through phonics. So with foreign language learners, I think we need to be careful that the consonant sounds the children learn with anchor words are easy to say, and help them clearly identify and distinguish the consonants. Some of the consonants are straightforward. For example, how is this letter pronounced? I would say d. And in the early stages, the children would call it dog. In the same way as with the vowels, the children would continue calling it dog until they don't need to use the anchor word to help them. But there are other consonants where things are not so straightforward. Here's an example. How do you pronounce this letter? When I train teachers these days, I find that many teachers pronounce it something like ul. This seems to come from popular phonics programs that are influenced by how phonics is usually learned by native speakers. And it is understandable because of the phonetic pronunciation of the letter L. But I think there are problems with doing things this way with foreign language learners. One reason is some teachers and children find it difficult to pronounce the sound ul clearly. Another reason is that, in many pronunciations of English, the pronunciation of the letter L varies according to its position in a word. The anchor word is for the pronunciation of the letter at the beginning of the word, which is called onset. A third reason is that I think some approaches to phonics overemphasize the importance of phonemes. Phonemes are, of course, extremely important. but so are onset, rhyme, and most importantly, how easy or difficult it is for the children to say and distinguish sounds. Let's look more closely at the letter L. If you are teaching children who have a particular problem with the pronunciation of L, such as distinguishing it from R, it is important that the children can clearly distinguish the sounds associated with the letters, and do this in a relaxed and fun way. I think it is better to pronounce the letter L as L, lion. Notice how clear it is for the children, and how easy it is for the tongue position and movement to be the same as at the beginning of the anchor word. While we are on the subject of distinguishing the letters L and R, the same applies to the letter R. Some teachers pronounce this something like though this varies according to the accent of the teacher. I think it is easier and clearer for both teachers and children to pronounce it rabbit, or ring. So how do we make this fun? What am I doing? The children usually think I am growling. So something like a cute dog or an angry growling dog can become a hint for the pronunciation of the letter R. If I want a child to self-correct her pronunciation of R, I can have a toy dog or a puppet miming growling at her. And it reminds her how she needs to position her mouth. La. What am I doing? It usually reminds the children of singing. So singing can become a hint for the pronunciation of L. And the prompt might be a bird, for example. The children can play games where they hear a word or see a picture that begins with the letter L or R, and try to touch or run to the letter L or R, and start growling or singing, and then say the word. What I am suggesting is that the consonants are pronounced in a way that is most helpful for pronouncing the initial sound of the anchor words, and for distinguishing them from other sounds. The only exception is the letter X, which it is probably best to refer to as X, box. Except for xylophone or possibly X-ray, and some place names, there are really no useful words for children that begin with X. I appreciate that pronouncing L as L and R as R is helpful for pronouncing words like lion or rabbit when L and R are at the beginning of words. But this is not sufficient for pronouncing words like ball or car, where L and R follow a vowel. Fortunately, there is a simple solution to this issue. We can introduce the pronunciation of consonants in a two-step process. In the first step, we use anchor words to help children read and write the letters, distinguish sounds, and pronounce the initial sounds of common words. And then, in a second step, we can focus on combinations where a consonant follows a vowel. And I will look at this second step in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.